You know, back in the late 1960s, if you were in Huntington Beach, California, you might have seen this small gospel group singing to hippies on the sand. All peace and love, right? But the man behind the music, a failed pastor named David Berg, well, what he was building would become one of the most chilling global organizations you've ever heard of. And that's really the question we're digging into here. How on earth does a movement that starts with open arms and promises of salvation spiral into this massive empire of control, religious prostitution, and systematic abuse that, for decades, authorities all over the world just couldn't seem to stop? To really get how this all went down, you've got to look at the guy at the center of it all. We need to get inside the head of David Berg and see how his own messed up past became the blueprint for a cult. So, where did this guy even come from? Well, Berg's story started way before he found those hippies. It started in a home where religion wasn't just faith, it was a performance, and it was a tool for profit and for punishment. Okay, so David Berg grew up watching his own mother, Virginia, build a whole career on a lie. We're talking a fake miracle cure that brought her fame and, you guessed it, money. He didn't just see her lie in God's name, he saw how well it paid. But at home, this same woman would subject him to these bizarre, cruel punishments. So, fast forward, he spends decades trying to be a minister, and he's a total failure. He keeps getting fired, usually for sexual misconduct. Then, at age 50, he finds them, lost kids on a beach, all looking for some kind of purpose. He'd found his perfect audience. And this right here, this really gets to the core of his psychology. Later in life, Berg wrote to his followers about this moment with his mother that he took as a sexual advance. Now, whether it actually happened that way is almost beside the point. The fact that he saw it that way and then published it for everyone to read, it shows you that for him, the whole idea of incest wasn't a taboo. It was just a broken boundary, one he would spend the rest of his life trying to break in thousands of other people. So once he had these new followers, Berg moved fast. He didn't waste any time. He had this whole systematic process, and it was designed to do one thing: completely erase their pasts and forge absolute, unquestioning loyalty to him. I mean, you have to understand, this was basically a factory for creating dependency. Step 1, cut off all outside ties. Your family, toxic. Your job, worldly, gone. Then, step 2, give them new biblical names. Wipe the slate clean. Step 3, fill every single waking moment with his voice, his recorded sermons blasting 24/7. There was no quiet time to think, to question. And finally, step 4, take away the one thing that lets you have a private doubt: solitude. Nobody was ever alone, not even for a second. And daily life in these communes, or colonies, wow, it was a masterclass in control. Berg started calling himself Moses David, or just Mo, like he was a prophet getting messages straight from God. Everything was shared, right down to your shoes. Toilet paper was rationed to 3 sheets. Break a rule, you'd be publicly humiliated. And his main tool of control? These innocent-looking comics called Mo letters. They looked like they were made for kids, but inside were some of the most twisted instructions you can imagine. Okay, so he's got their minds. They're totally devoted. But Berg wasn't done. He was about to reveal what this was really all about. See, he wasn't just after their minds. He wanted to control their bodies. And to do it, he came up with a doctrine so twisted it's hard to believe. And this is a perfect example of how he operated. He took one of the most famous lines in the entire Bible, "I will make you fishers of men," and he perverted it. He called his new version flirty fishing. Female members were now ordered to go to bars, seduce lonely men, especially rich ones, and use sex to bring them and their wallets into the group. His logic was just grotesque, but it worked. He'd say, hey, if car companies can use sex to sell cars, why can't God use it to sell salvation? And the scale of this, it is just staggering. According to the cult's own records, between 1974 and 1987, flirty fishing led to more than 223,000 sexual contacts. This wasn't some fringe activity, this was a core industrial-scale recruitment strategy. So you might be thinking, didn't anyone push back on this? Well, yeah, they did. And Berg had the perfect answer ready for them, a theological loophole he called the law of love. Basically, he taught that if you did something out of love, it was justified. Didn't matter what the Bible said, didn't matter what the law said. This one vague, all-powerful rule became the ultimate weapon to shut down any dissent and authorize any command he gave. and once he had that weapon, he turned it on his own people. The law of love was then used to force sexual sharing inside the group. Your marriage vows, they meant nothing. Any man could ask for sex with any woman, and if she said no, she was the one who was sunning. It was a complete assault on the very idea of consent, all dressed up as the highest form of Christian love. And from here, well, the story takes its darkest turn yet. After completely destroying the boundaries between adults, Berg turned his focus to the most vulnerable people in his empire, the children who were born and raised inside it. And I want to be crystal clear, this wasn't subtext. It wasn't some hidden secret. This was explicit doctrine, written by Berg himself in one of those Mo letters. He wasn't just tolerating child abuse, he was actively promoting sex with prepubescent kids. He framed it as this innocent window of opportunity before the rules of being an adult kicked in. It's sickening. It's one thing to tolerate abuse, but they actually documented it. They packaged it up and distributed it as educational material. Publications like The Story of Davidito, which was supposed to be a child-rearing manual, and My Little Fish, a sex ed guide, were just filled with explicit photos and instructions. In reality, they were catalogs of crimes against children sent to thousands of members around the world as the official way to raise their kids. So for the kids growing up in this world, the word abuse just didn't exist. It was called sharing, education, love. They grew up in an environment where all sexual boundaries were completely gone. They learned songs with lyrics like "Do it 'cause daddy said so," teaching them that questioning authority was a sin. And right at the center of it all was a boy named Ricky Rodriguez, the cult's supposed messiah, whose entire childhood was documented as a template of abuse for everyone else to follow. So eventually, the outside world starts to notice. The pressure begins to mount. But instead of collapsing, the organization just adapted. It changed its name, it changed its rules, just enough to survive, all while making sure its leaders would never, ever face justice. I mean, just look at this timeline. You can see the pattern clear as day. Anytime the heat got too intense, they just changed the name. From the Children of God to the Family of Love, then just the Family, and eventually the Family International, which, by the way, is still active today. It was a simple but brilliant strategy to just keep shedding their past. And what's so infuriating is that for decades, legal systems all over the world just failed. In the US, they were called dangerous, but protected by the First Amendment. In Italy, a judge decided their religious prostitution wasn't actually a crime. In the UK, authorities admitted there was abuse, but said, hey, the group has changed. Over and over again, the institutions that were supposed to protect people failed the victims. But all that legal talk, it just falls apart when you hear from the survivors themselves. This quote from Miriam Padilla says it all. "I know it was wrong, but I was just a child and those people could do anything to me." It just cuts right to the heart of it, the absolute powerlessness of the children trapped inside. And that generational trauma, it all came to a head with Ricky Rodriguez. The boy who was born to be a messiah grew up to realize he was a victim. He was haunted by his past, saw no way to get justice, and in 2005, he hunted down and killed one of his abusers before taking his own life. His story is just the ultimate tragic proof of the deep and lasting damage this cult inflicted. So, has there ever been any real justice? Well, David Berg died of old age in 1994. He never faced a trial. His successor and wife, Karen Zerbe, who was right there for all of it, she's never been arrested. She still leads the Family International from some unknown location. Look, the organization today claims it has changed, that the past is the past. But what this story really shows us is that when abusers are never held accountable, when victims are never given justice, and when an institution's #1 priority is protecting itself, that isn't change, it's a cover-up.